I just thought, keep them alive. That's our job here, is just keep these people alive. So one day we can tell them the gospel.
When the burdens grow greater, he sendeth more strength. When the labors increase, he added affliction, he added his mercy. To multiply trial, his multiplied peace.
You're listening to Singing Their Song.
Hi, I'm Maxine.
And I'm Rebecca. We're glad you joined us.
There you are. Hey, hi there.
Hi, Grandma.
I brought a special guest today.
Well, he's looking kind of grown up there.
I know, right? Well, I figured, so I brought Tyler, who's my husband, because I was thinking...
Oh, that's Tyler.
That's Tyler.
Who'd you think it was?
Then you're looking very young.
Well, thank you.
Did you think it was Dylan?
I thought it was Dylan.
Oh, well, I could bring him sometime, too. How fun. Yeah, so I brought Tyler because I was thinking last time we talked about kids and what it was like to raise kids on the mission field. And, you know, they say that the first, 7 years of marriage is supposed to be the hardest. And so I thought, well, I wonder if it's the hardest when you're on the mission field, and we could talk about marriage on the mission field today with our special guest Tyler here to verify that the first 7 years is pretty challenging.
I want to know about it too.
What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you. Here's a comment that Howard made to me during those first 7 years. I'm sure glad we're thousands of miles away from your mom.
Well.
So, yeah, we had our adjustments, too.
Yeah. But you guys probably, I mean, it had to be different, right? Because it's like, you didn't have, if you got in a big fight, you didn't have people that you could, you know, you couldn't go over to your parents' house and get advice, or you couldn't.
Yeah, that's exactly his point right there.
That's what he liked, is that you couldn't do it, huh?
Yeah.
You had to rely on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I've often said, until we had children, which was 9 months after we were married, we never had fights.
Oh. Interesting.
We never had no fights at all until we had children.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, because I feel like for Tyler and I, that it tops the list for the reasons that we get in fights.
Yeah.
Parenting issues.
Yeah, differences.
Yeah, and we had no one where we were all by ourselves. We didn't have anybody to advise us on our parenting. Mm-hmm. And how he had been raised, how he had seen it modeled, and how I had been raised and how I had seen it modeled, were miles apart.
Yeah.
And I had never, ever dreamed that anybody could do anything but cuddle, love, and have patience with a child. And he had been raised to believe you just give him a swat.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That tough love.
That tough love kind of thing. And, that was the big fight.
Yeah.
That was what hurt. I did not like it.
Yeah.
One bit at all. So there we are. Now you know the whole story.
Yeah. Well, so playing out on the mission field, what were some kind of like things that stood out to you, I guess, in your marriage as you guys were there? Like, are there any stories that stand out or things that you would share?
Well, just flashing to my mind is when he came back from Paraguay. We thought we were going to be missionaries in Paraguay, so all of our stuff was, which was very little stuff, a couple of barrels, was shipped to Paraguay.
Mm.
And then when they shut down all visas in Paraguay, and we couldn't go on to Paraguay. We had gone to Bolivia just to study Spanish because they had a really good system set up. And so they had told us go to Bolivia first and then from there go on to Paraguay because you can get a lot of Spanish under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Howard had to go down and pick up our barrels and bring them back, he came back from Paraguay and he came back and he had been on this boat on the Paraguayan River, and he had been eaten up with mosquitoes, and he had terrible, I don't know what kind, but an awful brand of malaria.
Oh, no.
And I can remember that was while I was still pregnant. And I can remember before Howie was born, and I can remember being so scared he was going to die.
Yeah.
And him saying, Maxine, I'm chilling, because the symptoms of malaria are chills, fever, sweat. Chills, fever, sweat. And you do that over and over and over again. And he'd say, come to bed, I can't stand this, come to bed. And in the daytime even, I'd have to get up as close as I could in that hot place and till his chills would stop. And then the sweats and then the vomiting. And I can remember taking the pail out to dump it in the outhouse, just thinking he was going to die, and that I remember.
So you're pregnant. How pregnant were you?
I was probably about 6 months at the time.
And yeah. So what were you thinking you would do? I mean, that's a scary thought as a newlywed.
I don't recall what I thought I would do, but I do remember just being terribly scared, just being really scared.
Wow.
And fortunately, in our training, we had studied malaria. I knew the symptoms, and it wasn't hard to realize what he had. And we were able to get medication and get it under control.
Okay.
Good.
But I can remember that being a big thing to me.
Well, yeah, that would be a big thing. That would be really scary.
Yeah.
Where did you have, because were you in...
we were still in Roberay.
Oh, you were in Roberay, okay.
We were in Roberay helping the Zieglers. Carl Ziegler was on a contact team looking for IRAs in another section of the country.
Okay.
And his wife was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So we were there kind of to help her with her children and practice our Spanish at the time. Yeah.
Okay. That's a crazy thing to go through, especially at the start. Once you guys, so he traveled a lot. You kind of talked a lot because he had to do, and did he still travel once you moved kind of with the tribe?
While the 2 years before we were with the tribe, he traveled all the time. And then when we were with the tribe, he still traveled a lot because he had to help supply. He would, buy supplies and bring them in, and he had a ministry in some of the ranch towns surrounding where he'd go preach on Sundays, and he was gone a lot. I'm writing a story now for Cheryl Ketchum, And one of the phrases I remember in this story is, all missionaries' mothers know that when there's an emergency, their husbands are gone. And I remember all the many things that he wasn't near at all when I had to have an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you just get kind of used to it. Ho hum.
Yeah. So did your work ever change when he was, like, if he was there or not? Because, like, once you were living with the tribe, what did it look like on days that he was gone? Did you do the same kind of things, or did you do different
Well,
things?
I would cover for him. Like, he usually took care of what we called sore-eyed call because the IRA people pluck their eyebrows and eyelashes out.
Mm.
And so they have no defense of these little gnats.
Mm-hmm.
So they always have infections in their eyes. And there's a lot of blindness among them.
Well,
And
why do they do that?
we asked them that, and they said, we don't want to look like monkeys.
Oh, okay. So it was cosmetic.
They even pull out their facial hair. Like, one of the legends is the girls that were fooling around with the boys when they were flirting, and they would talk while they would pull out the beards of their lovers.
Okay.
and they didn't want any facial hair at all.
And so they would pluck it. Can you imagine me sitting there plucking your hair?
No. Like,
Yeah.
so, like, eyebrows, eyelashes, beard, mustache.
All of it.
Like, what about, like,
That's good.
hair?
That's good flirting.
Yeah. It's like a form of grooming.
Yeah.
I mean, now that we're married, there's a fair share of grooming on each other's parts anyway. But
Yeah.
but I can't imagine that as like a courtship. It's a little personal right there.
And when there would be an emergency, like let me tell you one emergency, I covered for him, because anything physical, anything like that was very big, Howard always took care of. But one of the men in the tribe was out working on his garden, and his somehow he hit his knee with his machete, and they brought him to the door, and it was just like a huge liver on top of his knee. He had bled so much. Well, by this time, Howie was, maybe 10 or 12. And he just took over and helped me. I didn't know what to do, whether I was afraid to take this coagulation of blood off, afraid it would, start bleeding again. I was afraid not to.
Yeah.
Because I had to see the wound. And so I remember I got it off, put it in a basin, and then I wrapped, pressure bandaging on the knee, and then would just keep work on that. And then I looked up in Merck Manual, which was my second Bible, and the medical manual. And it said that with great loss of blood, be sure that you make this mixture, and it was with salt, sugar, and water at certain proportions, and give teaspoonfuls until they, for a long period of time. And Howie said, go to bed, Mama. That's something I can do. Aww. And he stayed all night long with that man, feeding him that liquid.
Wow.
And another time, the kids and I were alone, and we had co-workers at that time, and one of the IRA men who was dying of tuberculosis, and we thought he would die at any time, had a second, he came out of a coma, and went crazy.
Wow.
And I could see him running all over and yanking on doors and doing crazy stuff. And I knew I had to go down where the missionary man was and let him know. So I woke up all my kids and I put them at the door and they saw what was happening and says, now I'm going to run down there to the Ziegler's house. If he starts after me, one of you kids run down there and tell Carl Ziegler that this man has gone crazy.
Oh my goodness.
And Howard was gone. I could go on and on.
I just love how all these stories have these emergencies. Your kids are in tote. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do with them anyway? Like, they have to,
Yeah.
they have to be there, and they're learning so much, probably from you.
Yeah.
Through all this, like life skills.
I think that they never felt. My parents are missionaries, and then there's us. We're missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
Another time, a little boy, the IRA kids put him in a box, and they were pulling the box, and like it was a stroller or something. And one of them got the idea, if we push this box, let's see how far it'll go down the hill. And it went down the hill fast and into the river. And the little tiny boy fell into the river. And they were afraid they'd get caught, so they ran away. And so someone went by and saw him. And by this time, he looked like he was drowned. And they brought him up to the house. And so I had never done artificial resuscitation.
There you go.
Never done that before. So his dad brought him up in his arms. He was unconscious, and little bowel movement all down his daddy. I laid him down on the floor of my living room, and the thing the Merck manual said then was to not give up too soon. Well, I didn't know what too soon was.
Yeah.
I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And I had never heard of mouth to mouth. So it was the old way on his back. And it took a long time. And finally, just quantities of water started coming out. And sure enough, the little guy came back around.
Wow.
And I remember then too how he helped with that too, and stayed with the little guy and giving him liquids and things. And I threw myself on my bed like I'd been on a long horseback ride.
That had to be exhausting.
And I remember
all of it.
I almost fell asleep. Well, I did. I fell clear asleep. And Howie took over.
Well, you think about it, like just the physical, but then also that emotional and mental drain, trying to resuscitate a little
the
boy.
IRA some crowded into the house, some were at the window, and I couldn't get air to the little guy. So I had a hallway, and I took him into the hallway so they could, and told him to stay out of the hallway. And I can remember working in that hallway. Yeah.
Wow.
But there were many emergencies.
Do they ever get easier, like an emergency? Because I'm CPR and first aid certified, and I get trained every year. But I think it would be really hard or scary to actually like implement, even though I'm trained, to actually do it. I think there's still like that. What if I'm like you said? What if I'm doing it wrong? What if all the what ifs.
The what ifs are really scary. We had a woman who gave birth, but the placenta wouldn't come. And I did not have the courage to go up in there and try to bring it down, and she died. And that was the what if there. If I go up in there and I make her bleed to death, they'll blame me. If I don't go up in there and bring that placenta, she'll die.
Yeah.
I mean, there's your what if again, and nobody to consult. There was no one to consult, of course. And it was in my hands, and I can remember Howard was gone then, and Len Barrett, who was our co-worker, said, Maxine, you've got to do it. I've done it for cattle. And he told me how to do it. And he said, otherwise she'll die. And I can remember looking at him, and the IRA were just so recently out of the jungle. They had killed 5 of our missionary men, and I had no idea what they would do if they blamed me for killing that woman. And it was that's how I felt too, just because I was totally untrained.
Yeah.
In that we didn't have any training in that. And
did you ever think when you were getting all of your training, boot camp and all of that you'd be in those kind of situations?
Oh, never. Here's what I viewed myself. I thought, I'll just be a good wife to my husband. That's what I thought my position would be. I had no idea that I would be called upon on these hard things. And as far as do they ever get easier? No, because every instant is different. You don't get I remember the little girl that we were trying to bring back from just death almost. She was baby, and I had sat with her in my arms all night long and doing this steam thing with her and trying to bring her back out of the pneumonia that I felt that she probably had, and she died in my arms. And just,
How do you deal with that? How do you, as a, just on that emotional level, I feel like all of that loss would be so hard.
I felt God let me down.
Yeah.
Because I was praying, all night long for her. And I'm sorry to say it, but I felt God let me down.
Yeah. It's natural.
And then you feel guilty because you feel that way. And, you can't, there's no one to comfort you at a time like that.
Just the amount of loss that you guys had to deal with almost instantly.
From the very beginning that we were with the IRA, they wanted our help, and they didn't want our help. They loved us, and they blamed us. We never knew what their reaction would be.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that in itself, like you mentioned earlier, that had to be just terrifying too, because, listening to the stories, it's easy to forget that the tribe that you were living with was a tribe known for brutality. And so, yeah, and for not necessarily being the most rational group of people. And so, yeah, you have to calculate everything down to even that, where it's like they're not going to see reason if something goes sideways.
Yeah.
That's real tough.
And I think I told you before how that this one lady explained how good it felt to be angry. They love being angry, and they love being. They did then. They loved being angry, and she said, "Oh, it feels so good. Oh, that feels good." And the violence they like to get violent with their anger. And she says, oh, that really feels good.
So when Grandpa was there, what was life like? So he took over, did he take over a lot of the medical things?
All of the medical, yeah. He took all of the medical. He even set bones.
Wow.
Like one of the IURA ladies broke her leg. And so she asked her people to bury her alive, like they always did.
Wow.
And Howard said, no. And he said, I'm going to fix it. I can fix it. And she said, yes, but it was iron that broke it, because she had fallen off of the back of the tractor and hit it against something. And she says, because it was iron, there is no hope.
Oh, wow.
And so Howard talked her out of it, and sure enough, she healed. And he set her leg, and every day went down there like a doctor on rounds.
Yeah.
And another time we had a man that was hunting and came across a jaguar, and the jaguar bit all over the top of his head, just mauled him, and he somehow managed to kill the jaguar. And they brought him in, and Howard did a pressure bandage all around his head, and then their witch doctor decided to cure him on his own, so he massaged the head. And the blood started again.
Oh.
And
sounds painful.
Yeah, that sounds really painful.
Yeah, the blood all started again, and so they came for Howard again, and Howard he put more bandage on this time, huge amount of bandage, and finally, but the man lived. And he also learned to do dental work, not fill teeth, but he could pull teeth.
Yeah.
And he also brought in different vaccines and things like that. He was really on top of it. He was good, really good at what he did.
What's crazy to think about too is just like how things used to be, and like the norm, I guess, was going down and you just do all of it. And now, missionaries I talk to, there's special people in medicine that go and do the everything medically, right? Like they usually will have trained medical professionals that go down as missionaries instead of...
Yeah. Now there's flights, and now there's this, and now there's that.
I think that's what's so crazy sometimes is like it seems like it wasn't that long ago, right? That you did this, but like it seems like a whole other world.
Still the 20th century, not like,
Yeah. That's just...
Yeah, it really
I
was.
can't imagine.
And it was only, in the 1950s we were going through all of this, because we went down in 1951. So...
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't that long ago, but it just...
No.
It's crazy.
Well, it's been a while now.
Well, sure. And advances have been made, but it's just insane to me to think about what you guys... The emergencies and things like that.
And I there are as brutal people still. The brutality of some of those tribes never has gotten better. And but the Ayure are a small tribe, and we only think there's 5,000 to 6,000 Ayures.
Wow.
And they're not a large tribe. And now it's just amazing where they are spiritually, and having no more of any of this is happening anymore. And if you would have told me they would change like that at that time, I just thought, keep them alive. job here is just keep these people alive, so one day we can tell them the gospel.
Wow. So, tell me about IORA marriage.
IORA marriage is, well, the woman has the most thing to do with it. The girls or women, when they want a man, they groom, and they wash themselves. They bob their hair short and bangs, and they paint their faces, and they with streaks of carodi stone, and they sing a lot, and they at night go to anybody that they want to.
Oh.
And it's impolite for a young man to refuse them. So they've been usually with many people.
Okay. So
because
marriage isn't a thing then? They don't get married?
It's just about procreation?
Well, when they decide that they want one man, they go to him in the night, and in the morning they stay all night, and then they get up and cook his food.
Oh.
And that constitutes marriage.
Interesting. And so
as long as you're not cooking for him, you're not married to him.
Okay. And he doesn't have to eat it. It's just if you cooked for him?
Oh, it's just you just cook it for him.
Okay. So they really don't have a choice.
Well, they don't seem to mind.
Takes some pressure off, huh?
Yeah, it takes the pressure off. And then her parents become, and her relatives become the principal relatives. And his fall in the background. And like if he goes hunting, her relatives get the good pieces. His relatives get the inferior pieces of meat.
Okay. Interesting. So it's better to have a daughter in this culture.
Yeah.
I guess. I'm sure. With two boys, I'm thinking, we're going to get bad cuts of meat.
Get all the ribs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And do they have, I guess, so it's just so if she just stopped cooking for him, is that considered a divorce?
No, it's hard for her to get away from him now.
Okay.
Now she can't flirt. Now she doesn't sing anymore.
Oh.
Now she lets her hair grow long. Now she doesn't groom herself very well. And so if she tries to leave, he hits her, and he cuts her, or he does something awful to her. Once she's married, it's hard for her to get away.
Okay. And
I know that they say he loves her. That's why. That's why he mistreats her, because he loves her. And we've had the women come running to us that have gone through maybe being beaten, and wanting us to hide them. And they do, like the men sometimes have more than one wife. And now they don't, but they did then. Yeah. They could have more than one wife. And when the men go hunting, like they go in a group, and the single girls go with them for that trip. Oh. And that's okay with everybody as long as they come back and stay away from the men in camp. And
I imagine there's a lot of child rearing outside of marriage, because it seems like there was a lot of promiscuity, right?
No, they bury them alive.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why they bury their babies. For all firstborn are buried alive.
Oh, wow. All firstborn.
All firstborn are buried alive. Were, I'm saying
Yeah.
are. None of this happens now. But at that time, all firstborns was a purifying act for the promiscuous mother.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like a sacrificial thing.
Once that child is buried alive, then she can pick him up or not. The mother always has the right to bury or accept this baby, and they call it picking him up.
Wow.
If she does not want it, they bury him all. Like you might say to him, how many children have you had? And they'll say, well, this one I buried and this one I buried. Kept this one, but these two I buried. Wow. And this one, and they'll tell you who they buried and how many they have living.
Wow.
Yeah.
That has to be kind of unnerving when you're having those conversations.
They just offer it.
Okay.
They just offer it, and nothing seems to shock you after a while.
Well, yeah, that's true. I guess so.
I think going there and being, like you said at the beginning, like pregnant, and then seeing that would be a pretty big shock, just like culturally, like as you get ready
as
to
you're pregnant with your first child.
Yeah, with your first child and having kids, to see just the way things are done so differently.
Yeah, you just get a little bit inured to it all, and you pray for them, and the Lord is there, the Holy Spirit's there, you know why you're there, and one thing that we're taught is don't interfere with their culture.
Yeah.
Never impose anything outside their culture upon them, unless it's so much better mm-hmm. and they want it. Because if you say to them, burying your babies is terrible, you should not do that, then they just hide it. They do it anyway, but they just hide it, and they don't call you. And so the way we tried to show that all life was important was our little orphanage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I told Tyler about mm-hmm. it when we talked about the orphanage that you guys started, and that woman that hugged mm-hmm. Grandpa, and
yeah.
And you and I used to do prison ministry together, jail ministry.
Yeah.
We used to go to jail together.
Yeah.
And I think about kind of that same thing. If we had gone in and started with a list of what you've done wrong, how many women would come on a weekly basis to meet with us, right?
Yeah.
Or just the wall they would put up.
Yeah, the wall, or they would lie about it, like you said, or just hide it instead of, the Bible says we should bring things out into the open. That's where healing happens, right?
Yeah. If we confess our sin, He's faithful and just to forgive us our sin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know in jail ministry, I always say, what I am capable of every sin. Every one of us are born with the ability to do anything mm-hmm. because we're born in sin.
Yeah.
We all have sin cruising through us. Mm-hmm. And the wonder of it all is when Jesus comes in and we're born again mm-hmm. and that we don't have that. We battle the old sin nature, but it can't, it's not the same. And these wonderful truths we give to the IRA too, mm-hmm. just like we did in jail,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, before we end, I think, just back on marriage and thinking about marriage. Grandpa was quite the romantic, right? I always understood him. He was he was a romantic guy. Any good mission stories from from living with the IOAs and living on the mission field? Any good romances? Yeah.
After Michael was born, I had to have a DNC, and I had quite a lot of problems. Howard had gone back down into the lowlands, and I had stayed with the kids up in Cochabamba, healing and everything, but I had a lot of trouble after Michael, and I had all of these things to take care of. By the time the word got by radio to Howard, it seemed bigger in his mind than it actually probably was. Oh, I've still got the letter. Oh, Lord, I'm the sinner, not Maxine.
Aww.
This poor lamb, why should she go through all of that? And the letter was just full of just him feeling terrible that I'd gone through that. It's a beautiful letter. And the one thing is like if he had been gone for a while, and maybe he even had brought back supplies, but instead of waiting for the tractor to come in and pick him up the next day, I'd hear someone walk into the house, and I'd say, Howard, is that you? He says, well, I hope it's me. He would come home. He'd walk clear into from the train station to Chovite. And that kind of showed me a little bit of love in there.
Yeah. He couldn't wait to get to you.
Couldn't wait to get to me.
I love it. Well, thank you.
Great story.
Yeah.
We have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength has failed, ere the day is half done, when we've reached the end of our hoarded resources, our Father's full giving has only begun.
If you want more information about our time in Bolivia, go to ayore.org. That is spelled AYORE.org.